Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS report. It is Monday, February the 28th, the final day of February. Thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. Last Friday's show was my most viewed show to date. As always, thank you guys just so much for the support. Please smash that like button if you wouldn't mind. Smash the subscribe button if you haven't already. We do these shows every day, Monday through Friday, and hopefully looking to make some winners of you guys as well. We've got the Hughes Bowl tonight. Yes, we do. Should be exciting. One of them's 2-0. I can't remember. I think Jack's 2-0. One of them is. Can't remember. Seems like that game could quickly become high scoring. Yeah, I totally agree there. What a weekend. Toronto won, Winnipeg 2, absolutely smashing it. Yeah, Saturday was solid. Toronto won, obviously, just went completely nuclear. They were the top ranked line for me on Saturday. If you were subscribed to DFO Premium, the number 2 line was LA2, and pairing them together was certainly successful as well. So, welcome in as always. Let's get into it. A small little 3-game slate to start off the week. Pretty busy week of action, though. I think we've got 9 games tomorrow, 8 games on Thursday, 10 games Saturday. So it should be a really good week of NHL hockey. Just a quick reminder that today's slate starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, not your traditional 7 o'clock. So you got a little bit extra time to build those lineups. And let's get into it with the goaltenders, most of which are confirmed for tonight. We're going to see Ilya Samsonov for the Washington Capitals against Peter Mrazek for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Most likely going to see Nico Daws in net for the New Jersey Devils, coming off his best start as a professional up against Yaroslav Halak for the Vancouver Canucks. And then in the final game of the night, a rare early confirm from the LA Kings, Jonathan Quick getting the start for the Kings against Jeremy Swayman for the Boston Bruins. Since Bratt has been so hot lately, that's my Hattie pick before it gets stolen. And then right after, somebody picked Jesper Bratt. Amazing. Way to go. But Jesper Bratt is certainly looking good tonight. We'll get into all that now. Just quickly, I don't know if it means anything to you or not, but I did change the color scheme of the charts to the Ukrainian blue and yellow to kind of just show my support for the brave men and women of Ukraine. Again, not really a political show, but I felt that, taking out the red, white, and blue color scheme and going to the blue and yellow was a nice gesture. So I did that, and hopefully it's not too hard on the eyes. I actually really, really like it. So if they all look a little bit different to you today, that's kind of the reasoning behind it. In terms of the implied totals for tonight's slate, the 2 big favorites, not really big favorites, I guess. The Devils and Leafs have the highest implied totals, but the Devils Vancouver game expecting to be very high scoring, the over under 6.5. It's big there. So both teams, like somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, that it looks like a game that could get high scoring quickly. And it's not just the fact that like both these teams have been playing in incredibly high scoring games as of late. Both offenses have been clicking. More often than not, the scoring in the Canucks games have come from the Canucks because Thatcher Demko locks things down. But with Halak in net, I would imagine that there'll be a little bit more there for the Devils tonight. And the Devils obviously have had goaltending concerns pretty much all season. As I mentioned, Nico Dawes coming off of his best performance, but then John Gillies followed it up with like 7 or 8 goals against Chicago. So, this game certainly looks like one that could get out of hand pretty quickly. And the sports books obviously seeing that as well. The Washington and Maple Leafs game looking pretty high scoring as well, though basically the exact same over/under there, with the Maple Leafs being road favorites. And then the late game a little bit of a lower scoring affair there, but an interesting one nonetheless from a DFS perspective. So let's get into the 5v5 scores for tonight. Toronto 1, not really all that surprising, grading out at the very top of the list, but followed very closely by New Jersey 2 and Boston 1. So those are kind of your 3 big lines to target tonight, but New Jersey 1 grades out very well as well. LA 2, not all that surprising. We'll get into them a little bit later. This is, again, they are a little bit more of a line where you have to factor in their matchup a little bit more than other high-powered lines that average 40 scoring chances 4 per 60. So they might not be as good as they kind of look tonight in terms of the 5v5 score, and as good as they've looked in overall. If you guys are arguing about who gets Jesper Bratt, we'll give you both Jesper Bratt since you commented at the same time. So if Bratt gets a hattie there, we'll give away a couple. Don't worry about who commented first. I got you both. You guys commented at literally the same time, so it's all good. Toronto 2, I don't know, John Tavares had 0 points in a 10-goal game. It's I don't know what's going to have to give there for him to, kind of get off the schneid here. But LA 1 looks solid. New Jersey 3 actually grades out pretty well. But then, you kind of notice here that below average, all of the Capitals and the Canucks. So not looking like a great night for either one of them, just overall based on the offensive 5v5 numbers, but we'll break it down a little bit more here and try to find if we have any interest in them overall. But Alvin, I want Brad. Okay, let's you're about 4 minutes late on the Jesper Bratt train. But matchups tonight, it's looking like, obviously we kind of talked about it before, these first 2 games looking pretty high scoring in comparison to the Kings Bruins game. Again, if you're just kind of joining in late here, yellow is the new red. So red is the lower numbers, or the numbers that you kind of want to avoid. Blue still means good. So we'll start up top here with the Capitals and the Maple Leafs. The Capitals top line actually has a pretty good matchup. They're going to be going head-to-head with this John Tavares line most of the night. So it looks like if you do want to play the Capitals, the top line is probably the route you're going to want to go. But that being said, their offensive numbers at 5v5 really haven't been all that strong this season. 28 scoring chances, 4 per 60, 10 high danger. They're not terrible, but they're certainly not spectacular. But again, going up against this Toronto second line, 29 scoring chances, 11 high danger. They have not been very good defensively. As you know, their offensive numbers still really strong, but defensively, they're giving up almost as much as they're getting on offense. So just a very kind of high event line, that Tavares line. So, Washington 1 looks okay from a matchup perspective tonight, but again, their 5v5 score is always going to lag behind because they just don't generate a ton of scoring chances at 5v5 though. So, I think the fact that their power play also struggles as well. I mean, the 6th best power play, the worst power play advantage on the slate. Their power play is not very good. It's the worst actually on this entire slate, going up against the Maple Leafs penalty kill. That's the best on the slate. The fact that they're not very good at 5v5 and kind of struggling on the power play really makes the Capitals difficult to trust. I mean, we saw them on Saturday afternoon. Only score 1 goal against the Philadelphia Flyers. So this is a team that's really struggling to find offense right now. Getting TJ Oshie back into the fold here should help. But overall, it's a team that's very difficult to trust. And even though the Maple Leafs goaltending has been a really struggling lately, it's still kind of difficult to buy in on the Capitals because the underlying numbers just aren't that strong. The one thing I will say, though, is the second line. So I just said that the first line is probably the one in the better matchup, whatever, right? But you got Ovechkin at 8,400, Kuznetsov 5,400, and Tom Wilson at 4,300. So 18,100 to full stack. I don't really even particularly care about the matchup as much when you look at the second line, Nicholas Backstrom just being 3,800 and TJ Oshie being just 3,600. To me, I think that both these lines probably have an equal chance of scoring tonight. I think both lines are probably going to struggle to a certain degree. And if I'm going to take a risk of playing a team that's really having a tough time scoring goals, I'm going to take that risk on a line that's just significantly cheaper And then when you take a look at the numbers, I mean, they're not that different, right? They're almost identical. They're actually much better defensively. The main concern for Washington too would be the fact that they are probably going to see a healthy chunk of the Austin Matthews line tonight, right? 35% against the Matthews line, the other 35% coming against the David Kampf line, and both those lines very, very solid defensively. The Matthews line, Matthews is gotten better defensively with each passing season. He's been very good this year. And, even like he doesn't even have to be that good defensively because they're so good offensively. They pretty much have the puck the entire time anyway. The David Kampf line just sucks the entire fun out of hockey. I've said that time and time again. I mean, only 21 scoring chances for, but only 17 against. So they're very, very effective bottom six line. And then, so overall, this matchup isn't very good for Washington too. So that's basically what you got here. You've got the top line with a slightly better matchup, but $5,000 more expensive. The second line with a worse matchup, worse numbers, but way cheaper and probably a little bit less risky, just because if they don't produce, you're only paying $3,600 for no production as opposed to $8,400. So I like Washington 2 a little bit more than Washington 1 tonight. Overall, I'm not that thrilled about either of them, but it's a 2 or a 3 game slate, so you got to kind of just consider basically anybody and everybody on a slate like this. From the Maple Leafs side of things, as I mentioned, their matchup's not very good for the top line. You're going to see a lot of that Backstrom line that's very, very solid defensively. You're going to see a lot of that Nick Dowd line, which has turned in pretty solid defensive numbers all season long, matching up against the opposition's top line pretty regularly. So it's not a great matchup for this Matthews line, but as I mentioned off the top, the Deneau line, you got to maybe play that matchup game a little bit more. But with the Matthews line, they're so good that their matchup proof. It really doesn't matter. They could be against the 3 greatest defensive forwards in the history of the game, and they would still probably find a way to have success. They've been that dominant all season long. These numbers, speak to that. 41 scoring chances again, or forward per 60, 15 high danger, a 64% expected goals for share. They've been dominant all season long. So Washington power play stack, Washington power play stack certainly looks like it wouldn't be overly popular tonight, given the numbers. I don't think that it's something that people would really strongly consider. But at the end of the day, when you've got Alex Ovechkin on your power play, and getting a guy like TJ Oshie back certainly helps. It's obviously a power play that can still have success on any given night. On the whole season, they've had a tough time, but on any given night, that's a power play that has certainly enough firepower to get the job done. And if Mrazek struggles at all tonight, then that is certainly a power play that could have success. The numbers suggest it being rather unlikely, but at the end of the day, it's impossible to completely write off a power play that has Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Carlson, Oshie, and then of course Alexander Ovechkin. So the numbers say maybe not the best play tonight, but if their ownership's going to be relatively low, then I am completely fine with that for sure on a 3 game slate. And you never know, might get lucky. Second game of the night, you've got the Devils and the Canucks. This looks like the highest paced game of the night. We said it's got the highest over-under of the night. And it looks pretty much spectacular from both sides. Just blue across the board here. Matchup scores for all 8 lines involved tonight looking very, very solid. In terms of the Devils, their top line, the Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Igor Sharangovich, and Dawson Mercer line have the best matchup on the entire slate. They're going to be going head-to-head with Vancouver 2 most of the night. Vancouver 2 really a line that has not fared very well defensively so far. Again, a lot of these samples for the Canucks are a little bit wishy-washy because it's combinations that we really haven't seen play together a whole lot. But whenever you're giving up 34 and 15, that they're not going to improve that much, right? They're not going to go from a line that looks like the worst defensive line of the slate to a line that's the best defensive line of the slate. It's just not going to happen. It's a line that's going to struggle defensively. Jack Hughes, obviously, I think he's got 3 multi-point games in a row. Igor Sharangovich is on a 6-game point streak. Dawson Mercer's obviously been productive throughout the season. So that line with the best matchup on the entire slate certainly looks solid. I think a lot more people are going to flow to the Zacha, Hischier, Bratt line because Jesper Bratt's a freak, but New Jersey 1 should certainly carry plenty of ownership as well, and they look solid. Like I said, Sharangovich is 4,200, a guy that's been scorching hot for the last couple of weeks. Jack Hughes at 6,000 is very modestly priced. Dawson Mercer riding on the right wing of that line at 2,900 is terrific value. So 13,100 they're firmly in play for me tonight. The second line, just as good. The matchup, maybe not quite as good, but it's not far off. And in 95.7 in terms of matchup score, they're going to see a lot more of this Bo Horvat line, which again, not quite as bad defensively as the second line, but not great either. 31 scoring chances against, a 46.9 expected goals for share. And then you just take a look here at New Jersey 2's numbers. Across the board, they are just absolutely stellar. Almost 20 high danger chances for. I mean, they're starting to flirt with the LA 2 style of numbers here, right? Just very, very good night in and night out. And with Yaroslav Halak getting the start, the Canucks coming in on a back-to-back, this is a really good spot for the Devils. They've certainly failed us before in kind of, chalky situations, but, at 13,500 for the second line, 13,100 for the first line, it's really difficult to ignore their upside here in a game that not only me, many people in the comments, the Vegas Sportsbook think that this game is going to be high scoring. So this game certainly looks like one, as Peter B just mentioned, worth game stacking. Because, it's a game that could get out of hand quickly. And it wouldn't be all that surprising if the Maple Leafs, coming off of a 10-7 game, maybe try to play a little bit more defensive tonight, right? We've talked about how the Capitals have had a couple, their fair share of issues scoring goals. So that game, I wouldn't be surprised if that game ends up being like a 3-1 Maple Leafs win, right? Where it doesn't go ballistic. It's not overly high scoring. Then the late game, maybe a 3-2 Kings or 3-2 Bruins win, not crazy high scoring either. And then this game could be like 6-5, right? And then game stacking this game with how cheap everybody is could certainly end up being the winning route this evening. So the other two games, I see avenues to where they could be pretty low scoring. This one just feels high scoring no matter what. Obviously things can get weird on us, but this game feels like it's going to be kind of just some fire wagon hockey. So in terms of the Canucks, obviously they don't grade out very well here. Basically all right beside each other, all below average. But the pricing is very friendly. They're really asking a lot of Elias Pettersson at 4,400 to play with Niels Höglander and Alex Chiasson. He didn't get a ton of run last night either, so I'm a little bit concerned about his playing time, but he's been red hot. So to me, I think, one-offing Elias Pettersson is fine. I don't love Chiasson. Höglander's okay, but I just don't really like full stacking this line. So one-offing Pettersson or including him kind of like in a power play stack with the other guys is fine with me. But the way that the power play is and the way their lines are set up, it's very fragmented, right? You got Pettersson from the third line, you got Horvat and Besser from the top line, then you got Miller from the second line. So it's just kind of all over the place here. But, the second line or the top line, very, very cheap as well. You've got Bo Horvat, just 4,800, Brock Besser, 4,600. They were quiet yesterday, looking for a bounce back performance against Nico Dawes tonight. The guy that's really playing well for the Canucks right now is JT Miller, $5,500. And he looks great. That second line looks like they're in an okay spot as well. $5,500 for Miller, 4,800, 44 for Garland, and 38 for Tanner Pearson. That's the one to me that stands out as like the best full stack. In this, on this team. I don't really love Vasily Podkolzin. He really just doesn't do a whole lot from a DFS perspective. Horvat and Besser, if you want to mini stack them, I can get behind it. But I think that they're cheap enough where you don't really need to include Podkolzin. You don't really need to include Chiasson or whatever, right? And these little mini stacks can be successful. So the second line is the only one I would really consider full stacking, in my opinion. But the other, the rest of these options look pretty good because across the board here, the matchups are really solid. But like I said, that Miller line's got the best matchup. They're the one I would consider full stacking most likely. The top line got a pretty good matchup. The third line's got the worst matchup of the three. But overall, Elias Pettersson, as a one-off is really as much as I'd play them anyway. So kind of a weird lineup for the Canucks, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to target them from a DFS perspective. But to me, that opens up avenues to get different. On a 3-game slate, you're going to have to. So obviously, just full stacking these lines together is going to be what other people are doing as well. So get different with your combinations of playing Canucks with Devils and whoever else you're playing them with, because that's the way you'll differentiate tonight. So, it makes it kind of awkward to stack the Canucks the way their lineup is built, but it allows you to get different pretty easily. So that's the way things look there. In terms of the numbers, not really great really from anybody. But again, I mentioned at the top, it's kind of just a lineup that's been, in flux. It's been shuffling around a lot, different players playing with different people. And we don't have great samples on any of these 3 lines. They're okay, but they're not like lines that I'm going to be all in on or samples that I'm like going to buy into completely. Like, I really don't think that the second line is this bad defensively. They're probably pretty bad, but they're certainly not, 15 high danger, 35 scoring chance against bad. In terms of the power play report, the top, both teams' power play units have been struggling pretty mightily this season. The Devils are pretty good on the kill. The Canucks, not so much. Overall, Devils' 3rd best power play advantage on the slate. The Canucks with the 2nd worst. I don't know if I mentioned it in the first game, but the Maple Leafs, the best power play advantage on the slate. The best power play by a mile on the slate. The Capitals' penalty kill just slightly above league average. 3rd and final game of the night, the lowest event, the lowest total, probably the least interesting from a DFS perspective. But again, everybody's going to be wanting to stack Toronto. Everyone's going to want to probably play New Jersey and Vancouver. So on a 3-game slate, if there's one game that people are kind of staying away from, it's an easy way to get different. And this looks like a game where there's still, certainly enough firepower to where it still warrants some consideration. So I certainly like both teams in this game. I'm kind of been a sucker for the Kings all season. I've been, the charts have loved them all year long, and I'll continue to go back to them. The problem tonight is, as I mentioned off the top, is that the Danault line is one that you have to be a little bit more choosy with, as opposed to somebody like Boston 1 or Toronto 1 or Colorado, like those other elite lines. 79% of their ice time tonight is expected to come against the Patrice Bergeron line. And that Bergeron line, if you've tuned into the show before, has been unbelievable all season. I've talked about it every single time the Bruins play. They have been incredible. 14 scoring chances against per 60, 5 high danger. They have been absolutely lights out. It's an impossible matchup. So as good as LA2 has been this season, as good as they've been lately, this is a brutal matchup for them. I don't know if I can talk myself into playing Danault, Trevor Moore, and Victor Arvidsson in this spot. If there is ever a moment in which I was going to fade them, which I do not do very often, and you guys have been witness to that this season, this is the one. It is a horrendous matchup. And if you've watched the show a lot before, they normally rank in the top 3 lines. Obviously, dropping down here to 5 is more to do with their offensive numbers, but overall, at 15,000 to full stack them, I am having a much more difficult time playing them tonight than on other nights. So to me, the top line is the one to target from a Kings perspective. I follow Kopitar and Kempe. They're only $700 more expensive. They usually play more, which is great. And they're going to see roughly 63% of their ice time against the Howla, Pastrnak, Taylor Hall line. Now, the Howla, Pastrnak, Taylor Hall line has also been very good, but not nearly as good, giving up 10 more scoring chances, almost double the high danger chances against compared to the Bergeron line. So if these matchups hold true, which this is the route that they have been going with regularity as of late, going Danault against the top line, Kopitar against the second line, then this should be much more advantageous for the Kopitar line than the Danault line tonight. So as much as I've praised LA2 throughout the last few months, this is certainly not a night where I am very thrilled about putting them in my lineup. So LA1 for me. On the flip side, this Danault line, as good as they've been offensively, they actually, at the moment, grade out as the worst defensive line that the Kings have. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because the Kings are so good defensively that even their worst defensive line is still very, very solid defensively. Only 26 scoring chances against, 11 high danger. It's not crazy bad, but it is enough. It leaves the door open for Boston 1 tonight. So if that is going to be the matchup, I would not be surprised if Boston 1 dominates their matchup and Kopitar carries the play a little bit more to that Taylor Hall Howla line tonight. So Boston 1 to me is in a terrific spot tonight. Overall, the matchup score is at 60.9. Very, very solid for a line that's that good. If you compare it to Toronto 1, it looks like a much better matchup than Toronto 1 has. And they're the 2 really high price lines tonight. So I still think Toronto 1's in a slightly better spot. I think it's going to be a more high-scoring game. I think that they're overall a better offensive line. But Boston 1 in maybe somewhat of a depressed ownership night because of how much everybody else is going to play the second game and how much everyone else is going to play the Leafs. You might get Boston at decent ownership in comparison to what you would normally get them at on a 3-game slate. So it's difficult to ignore them. And then when you factor in how good Jake DeBrusk has looked there, in obviously a short sample, but at 3,300, Jake DeBrusk, he makes this line suddenly significantly more affordable, just 17,300 to full stack them. Even Bergeron is way too cheap at 6,500. So this is a really good spot for Boston 1. Again, I'm never the greatest at projecting ownership, but I would imagine that they're not going to be out of this world high tonight. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but I don't think that they're going to be like 30% owned, which is, there's a lot to say about that on a 3-game slate. So, maybe DeBrusk creeps up there at 3,300 because he's such a good value play. But the other two, I wouldn't be surprised if they hover in more around 20, 25, maybe. Again, ownership is certainly not my forte. I got 100 charts on here, and I'm good at breaking those down. Ownership is not one of them. So, anyways, power play report. Second power play advantage on the night for the Bruins. They have the 3rd best power play overall, but going up against a Kings penalty kill that's basically league average. The Kings actually have the 2nd best power play overall on tonight's slate, but the Bruins have the 2nd best penalty kill, so overall doesn't look great for the Kings on the power play. But I hope that kind of helps with who is the ones to target, because I do think it's the Kopitar line from the LA side of things, it's the Bergeron line from the Bruin side of things in this one. Like this Pastrnak line really hasn't done a whole lot, right? I mean, they've been productive because they have incredible players like Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak that don't need 50 scoring chances to have big nights, especially Pastrnak on the power play. But overall, the 5v5 numbers are fairly pedestrian. They grade out below average overall in tonight's slate, and it's a tough matchup with the Kopitar line. So, I think that they're an okay option, but as you can see here, they rank down about the 13th full line stack. But the price for Taylor Hall at 4,900 is solid. Pastrnak at 8,000 probably a little bit too pricey for me when I like Boston 1 a lot more. But if that's kind of the route that everybody's going, then maybe Boston 2 is a decent contrarian option because they are talented enough. And we've seen Eric Howell at 2,900 have plenty of success with Boston 2 when he's been playing with Pastrnak and Hall. But ceiling wise, I don't think that they're quite as good just from a pure matchup point of view as Boston 1. In terms of the defensemen tonight, still pretty cheap across the board here. Dougie Hamilton, 5,600 is far too cheap. But John Carlson, 6,100 is pretty reasonable if you're looking at targeting the Capitals tonight. Morgan Riley, 5,700. It's soft pricing tonight, really across the board. It might be a night where you're going to want to leave some money on the table just to try to get different. If your lineup is looking a little bit chalky, because the pricing does seem pretty soft, both from a defenseman point of view. The forwards, for the most part, seem reasonably priced as well. So leaving money to get different is certainly not a bad option tonight. In terms of the pure value plays, Hamonic still just an absolute shot blocking machine, 3,900. Dmitry Orlov grades out okay. He missed the morning skate due to personal reasons. He's expected to play, but just if you are playing him, just kind of keep an eye out for that. Ryan Graves, Matt Roy, they look okay. Luke Shen. Any love for Siegenthaler? He plays a ton. And at 2,900, he's okay. He shoots the puck decent amount. I'd like to see him block more shots. He's coming off a massive game on Saturday. I'm pretty confident it's the only time I've played Jonas Siegenthaler, and he had like 20 DraftKings points. So yeah, I could get behind him at 2,900. I mean, I don't think he's the safest play, but at 2,900, he doesn't really need to be. Beware of the Swayman. Yeah, that's another real concern about the Kings tonight, is just Jeremy Swayman has been absolutely dialed in. PK Subban, obviously not what he once was, but at 3,000, I think I would still probably rather play Subban over Siegenthaler, just the small price difference there at $100. Really, I think you're probably getting more of a ceiling out of Subban, ceiling out of Subban. The floor certainly doesn't look quite as high, but neither one of them has the greatest floor either. Timothy Liljegren's really my favorite value play on the slate. He's paired with Morgan Riley on the top pair, so he should play an absolute ton. He's been pretty consistent lately as well, shooting the puck with some regularity. So at minimum price, I mean, I don't think you can beat him from a minimum price defenseman standpoint tonight. I think Brandon Carlo is another one that's okay. But overall, I don't think you're going to need to go down there too much because, like I said, the pricing overall is relatively soft. Speaking of Jeremy Swayman, he grades out as the number one goalie on this slate, and it's not even really all that close. With an implied total of just 2.7 goals for the Kings, and it's also the team with the highest projected shot volume on the slate. It's easy to see why the model loves Jeremy Swayman tonight. So he grades out as the best goaltender to target. Nico Dawes is second at 7,800. That is really frightening to me. I don't know if I can do that. I actually like the Canucks to win this game. So the sports books is really what drives a lot of this, and they have the Devils as favorites, which is why Dawes grades out better. If I had to pick a goalie in that game, I would pick Halak over Dawes. He's a couple $100 cheaper. He has been really bad lately, but he was actually pretty good at the start of the season. So I would prefer to play Halak over Dawes, but I'm not really particularly fond of any of the goalies in that game. I really just want to play Jeremy Swayman as much as I can tonight. I think he's an outstanding option. Peter Mrazek would probably be my second choice, though. So Swayman and Mrazek, I know it's kind of a cop-out because they're the two most expensive goalies on the slate, but as I mentioned, that second game is just terrifying. I don't really want anything to do with it from the Devils-Canucks game from a goaltending standpoint. It's difficult to trust Jonathan Quick against the Bruins. Ilya Samsonov has had a pretty much horrendous year. He's coming off a strong game, but he was playing against the Flyers, who haven't scored all season. So meeting with the Maple Leafs tonight's probably not going to go great for Samsonov. So he's difficult to trust. He's super expensive at 8,000. So to me, it's a lot of Swayman if I can fit him. And maybe that's where you're going to have to play some of these value defensemen to get to Swayman, because he looks like by far and away the best play. But after him, Mrazek is okay number 2, and then probably Halak number 3. Maybe Jonathan Quick, but he's probably Quick number 3, I should say, actually, and then Halak number 4. But overall, it's going to be a lot of Jeremy Swayman tonight because it's just he's the only one that I can plug into my lineups and really have any faith of what he's going to do this evening. So in terms of my hat trick pick, again, if you've been already commenting your hat tricks in the chat, keep firing them in here. We had a couple on Saturday, or a couple on Friday hat tricks. I don't know if anybody picked them though. I couldn't find anybody. If I missed you and you picked some of the guys that scored a hat trick, let me know. Again, don't lie to me. Then I got to go back and look and verify it. But if you did, let me know, because I looked back and I couldn't find anybody. But yeah, who's my favorite one-off tonight? I mean, like outside of the obvious guys like Austin Matthews. I mean, Jesper Bratt's certainly up there at 5,300. It would probably be Jesper Bratt, like outside of the obvious guys. Like obviously Matthews, Marner's been red hot, but yeah, Bratt looks terrific in that spot. I guess Jake DeBrusk. Like if I'm not full stacking, like I have a lot of interest in stacking the Leafs. I have a lot of interest in stacking the Devils. The Bruins a little bit, but yeah, like Jake DeBrusk, if like as kind of a guy that just fills out your lineup, and like I feel better about playing Jake DeBrusk at 3,300 than punting some of those defensemen that are around that price range. So I would say that it would be most likely Jake DeBrusk. But in terms of hat trick picks, I'm going to stick with that and say Jake DeBrusk is my cheap hat trick pick. My expensive hattie tonight is going to be John Tavares. He's got to break out of it eventually. And maybe this is a spot for him to do so. It's got to happen eventually. And, I could cop out and say Matthews or some of these other obvious guys, but I think it's a big night for Toronto too, perhaps tonight, because I think they're going to be pretty under-owned, pretty undervalued. No one's going to want to play them after being held basically pointless on a 10-goal game. So, I think Toronto too is actually in a fairly interesting spot tonight, just, from a pure kind of contrarian perspective. Again, I don't think that they're going to carry considerable ownership. And again, if you take a look at the matchup score, 52.2, it's much better matchup than Toronto won. The numbers, obviously not quite as good, but still very, very solid. 32 scoring chances, 13 high danger. And I don't think they're going to carry as much ownership tonight. So I think Toronto 2 is in a super interesting spot. I love Andre Cash. He's just 3,900. It's only 16,000 to full stack them. So I could certainly get behind Toronto 2 tonight. So I'm going to go John Tavares as my hat trick pick. And then, yeah, fire your hat trick picks in. If you get it right, we will give you a free month of DFO premium. But I don't think anybody cashed in. We had 2 Hatties on Friday and nobody got one. Unbelievable. But if I'm playing Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak, DeBrusque, and I have 5,600 left, who is the best one off? Should I add Kempe in that game or someone else? Brad. If you don't have Brad in your lineup already, Brad. If you have 5,600 left, he's 5,300. So I would go yes for Brad in that instance, if you don't already have him in that lineup. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the DFO DFS report. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Please smash that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. This channel is slowly growing. Like I said, last Friday's episode was my most viewed video yet. I don't really do it for the viewers. I like the small community. I think I'd be overwhelmed if there was like 1 million chats going on at the same time. So I do like kind of the intimacy of this one, but it'd be good to see the numbers continue to rise, and smashing that like button certainly helps the cause. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys back here on Tuesday for another edition of the DFO DFS report. Cheers.